And I'm not giving up, I'm not giving up, no, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me.
Hey everyone, are you rad for Christ? Are you fired up for Jesus? Welcome back to Radical Christianity, the show that highlights God in action. I'm your host, Drew, and thank you for joining us here today. All right, like so many of us, I am a movie buff, especially when it comes to action films. Today, I want to talk about a new movie that recently came out. And no, I'm not talking about coming out of the closet, but it was pulled from the shelf. Let me explain. I'm talking about the faith-based movie called Sound of Freedom, which just so happened to be released this July 4th. How fitting, right? Really though, with it being released on Independence Day, this movie just so happened to outperform Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny by almost $3 million. That's right. No joke. But here is a joke. What is Indiana Jones' least favorite band? The Rolling Stones. Okay. Let's be real for a moment. This is an obvious marketing move to release the movie called Sound of Freedom on Independence Day. It's a no-brainer. Light the fireworks. Go America! But actually, this movie has very little to do with America and freedom as you and I think about it. The film is based on a real-life account of Tim Ballard, a former special agent who has embarked on a personal journey to save children from international trafficking. It is apparently filled with all kinds of intense drama and action throughout the scenes. Now, I personally wanted to see the movie when it first came out, but I have not been able to yet. And that is because I've been so busy consoling Indiana Jones. Poor Indy. He had to wipe his tears for the flag. I mean, it's all there was since it was 4th of July after all. I guess they should have just called it Indiana Jones and the Opening Day of Doom. Hey, I kid. Let's all add Indy to our prayers, okay? I'm sure that film is great also. Okay, but this is super interesting. Apparently, Sound of Freedom was originally filmed in 2018, featuring Mira Sorvino and Jim Caviezel. It was soon after that purchased by one of the world's biggest media companies, Disney, and then just shelved. Nothing happened with the movie, never released. That kind of makes you go, doesn't it? It almost seems like the House of Mouse had a social agenda. Well, the original filmmakers tried every which way to get the film rights back, and they finally got the attention they needed after Angel Studios used crowdfunding to raise $5 million needed to purchase the film rights in just 2 weeks. Yay, God! 2 weeks. Investors knew it was a risk, but hoped that the best case scenario would be that they'd gross like $20 million. Well, as it turns out, they've already surpassed their highest expectations by grossing $40 million and counting. Talk about God in action, am I right? All right. So also, another hit Christian film, Jesus Revolution, should be on Netflix at the end of this month. Mark it on your calendars, folks, July 31st. That is, if you want to see a film that follows 3 key leaders as they partake in the hippie-based Jesus movement of the 1960s. It's like Flower Power meets the church potluck. All I can say is, it's great to see high-quality Christian entertainment on the mainstream commercial market. Hopefully, there'll be much more. What about you guys? Have you seen either of these movies? What's your impression? Do you know of any other recent faith-based movies? Come find us on social media and please share your thoughts with us. We'd love to know. All right, everyone, that'll do it for now. Stay tuned and meet some awesome guests. So tell me, are you rad for Christ? Are you fired up for Jesus? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited for this next guest, and I hope that you are too. He is got a prison ministry going on, and these are the kind of ministries that we need to be talking about on this show. So, ladies and gentlemen, a huge, warm welcome for Jeff Rooney. Woo! Jeff, welcome to the show. Please have a seat. Thanks for having me. Great to have you here. Really great to have you here. So, the way that we start on this show is pretty basic. We basically just have you give your testimony, how you met Jesus, and then we try to work that into how that works into your ministry. Okay.
Sure.
So, if you could just kind of share with our audience, you can talk to me too. I mean, obviously,
Okay.
but like how you got together with Jesus.
Sure. So I didn't grow up in a Christian home, and it was in my early 20s, and I was going through a very difficult time. My mom was dying of cancer, a very low point in my life, and I just felt like I was getting pulled toward God or towards church. Couldn't put my finger on it. In hindsight, I had a lot of Christian friends who had planted little seeds along the way. And one friend in particular who gave me a Stephen Curtis Chapman cassette. And I still remember singing those songs, saddle up your horses, we've got a trail to blaze. And as my mom was dying, I was moving cross country. And I was moving from Connecticut to Laredo, Texas. I'm from Connecticut originally. So I stopped in Little Rock, Arkansas to visit my friend who had given me this cassette, right? And anyway, so I stop along the way, one less hotel payment. And I asked him, I said, look, I said, you're a Christian and I should be praying right now. Right? I said, what should I be praying for? And I assumed he would say, well, pray that your mom would be healed of this horrible cancer. And he said, Jeff, you need to pray that when you get to Laredo, Texas, that you'll meet someone who will take you to a good church. So I said, all right, God, if you're real, introduce me to someone who can take me to a church. I didn't know about prayer. I didn't know about these things. And so I got to Laredo, and I got the keys to my room, and I went and met my roommate, and I said, hey, I'm Jeff, yada, yada. I said, it's going to sound like a crazy question, but you don't know a church by any chance in this town. He said, oh, Jeff, I'd love to take you to my church. And so that's how I first went to church. It was in Laredo, Texas. And in the course of a month or two, the light bulb came on so clearly that it was Christ needed to be my focus. I needed to surrender my life, and the transformation began to take place. And so that's going back probably 30 years, 35 years. No, anyway, 30 years.
30 years. 30 years. So the church in Laredo, Texas, obviously just kind of started, right? That wasn't. So when did the transition, you might say? It's a weird term for it, but yeah.
No, I know what you mean, and so I started going to a Bible study there and started learning, and then I moved from there, and what really, when my faith really blossomed was I got into a serious Bible study, and at a church, small group, and we read through probably 2/3 of the Bible in 1 year, and I just remember reading, going, whoa, and I've heard of that guy, and that connects with this, and this, and the light bulbs all started coming on. I said, this is real.
It's interesting how when you go through the Bible faster, the connections kind of happen a little bit more. Side note, sorry everybody, but you know how they have the Bible now as an app, and it reads itself to you? It helps me get through the Bible, like I can get through more than the Bible entirely in a year now, because I've studied the Bible in small segments, and before, when I was younger, it was difficult to read big chunks of the Bible and actually absorb it. Now I can have it read itself to me. I've already gone through the whole Bible, but so it's like now it's like a refresher, and so when I get so much more out of it now. Like literally can go through Matthew, Mark, and Luke in a morning, and it absorbs so much. So yeah, so I recommend that everybody download the Bible app and let that thing read to you, and you will find, as he was saying, you go through it faster, you'll be making more connections. You may not absorb every little detail, but the bigger picture view sometimes can help you absorb more. And then, of course, you can still go and get the fine-tuned details.
And the Word of God changes lives. I see it regularly down at the jail, down the street from where we are right now. And I'll get talking to a guy, and I'll visit. I say, hey, can I send you, a Gospel of John? And that's kind of so I send them. It costs $2 on Amazon, and they got it in a couple weeks. They come, hey, did you have a chance to check that out? Yeah, wow, I really, just a couple of days ago, I was visiting someone, 19 years old. He's looking at a long time in prison. His whole life turned upside down. Had never read the Bible, and he really was like, wow, it was good. He says, and I have a guy in my unit who has a study Bible, and I've been reading his study Bible too. And I said, so what do you think of that? What's the Bible saying to you? He's like, man, I've got a sense of peace, and I have hope, and you put the Word of God in front of somebody, it's gonna, let God speak.
Yeah, I have a little bit of prison ministry experience. I've never led a prison ministry, so I really want to hear about that and how that all started. When I was a much younger man, a much younger man, I did some visits to prisons in Kalinga. And we would hop in a van, make the drive from Fresno to Kalinga, and then and then visit the prison, and which huge, massive sized prison. But the thing that I found, that simple statement that every prisoner seems to respond to, which is really weird, and that is you feel like you're in prison, but you've always been in prison. Right? Let me tell you how you can be free behind bars.
No, and no, that's it's a powerful message. And I have guys say to me, they'll say, they've come to faith while they're in jail and they're waiting to go to prison. Many times going with like a life sentence, and they'll say, Jeff, I'm finally free. I'm finally free. I'm thinking, man, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. They say, oh, but I'm finally free. I finally have peace in my heart after all these years and all this fighting. I'm free. You're like, that's right, man. Word of God, Holy Spirit.
I know I think that and we're going to talk a lot more, because there's stuff that the nonprofit's doing that I think that us connecting is God thing. There's a huge need for a prison ministry. I would say that's probably one of the most important ministries. I mean, obviously there's homeless, there's youth ministry, which is huge, but prison ministry, I think that one is probably one of the really most needed, like direct one-on-one style ministries that there really is. And it is one of those things that really requires a special kind of person to lead a prison ministry. So honestly, I think that it's a blessing that you're here. It's a blessing that we've connected, and it's really a blessing that God's got you doing this, because it's not just anybody that can do that. I mean, so a lot of people are too chicken to go sit and and interact with convicted killers and rapists and drug connected gang members, and what I mean. That's a pretty big thing. So tell me how Jesus got you into this.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a fun story. So about 20 years ago, I started praying for the incarcerated and praying for chaplains. And I had never been incarcerated. I didn't know anyone who was incarcerated. I had no connection. And I'm careful with well, God led me to this, God led me to that. But like someone said to me, like, well, the devil didn't put that on your heart. And so I just started praying. And then I got connected with a chaplain at a local jail. My wife and I met and married in Massachusetts. We've been out here 18 years. But so I got connected with the chaplain there, and I started going to a local jail out in Massachusetts, leading a Bible study. And for the first time I went, I was like, wow, this is where I'm supposed to be. Sometimes you go into a certain ministry setting, explicit ministry type setting, serving, and you're like, oh, this is where, you just connect, something clicks. And I just love the guys, man. There's no place I'd rather be than hanging out at the jail with the guys, man. And because I'll say to people, most of the folks we visit are Christian. They'll say, Christian guys down at the jail? And I say, well, yeah, they're dirty, rotten sinners saved by grace, kind of like you. Those are the folks we visit, But I love hanging out with them. I love seeing what God does down there. And there are different units. They call them pods, different pods, maybe 60 guys, 70 guys. And they'll have a prayer circle every night and read the Bible. Maybe 20, 30 guys on some pods reading the Bible and praying. I mean, God's alive and well down at the jail. Alive and well.
Yeah, I've seen that firsthand, so I know. And the truth of the matter is, there's definitely an opportunity for people to do the Lord's work while in jail. I mean, it's like I'm going to want you to share some stories in a second, but I kind of want to like set you up here, yeah. And that is like I've seen it. I've seen guys who life has changed entirely. Like they're a different person, and God's using them in prison to save other prisoners. You know what I mean? And it's like they have the time, literally. They got nothing but time. They spend it in worship, they spend it in study, they spend it in trying to talk to others. And it's really, and they're bold because they feel like they got nothing to lose.
I could talk all day. You said maybe 20 minutes. I could talk all day about all great stories. But one thing I'm always encouraged, and I encourage the guys with whom I visit, and I say, God's going to use you. God's going to use you in big ways. And I see it right in the jail, at the jail down here. And there are over 2,000 people at the Fresno County Jail. And then there are 30 some odd prisons that folks, go off to prison. But I see these guys who, even introverts, shy guys, and I say, so how you doing? I've been reading the Bible to this guy next to me, and he's got a lot of questions. And do you think you can get him a Bible? Because I think he wants to be a Christian. And I've been sharing with this Muslim friend of mine, and he borrows my Bible now. I think he's going to convert. I said, see, you're the aroma of Christ, man. You're doing God's work. I said, we're all in community. I said, you'd probably rather not be serving there. You'd probably rather be serving the Lord out here. But I said, but God's got a community for you. And God's going to use you in beautiful ways for the kingdom. And when you go visit folks at the jail, or you go to a prison and visit folks, from your experience down at Pleasant Valley, down at Coalinga, I'm assuming that's where you're at, Pleasant Valley.
Yeah.
Pleasant Valley State Prison. That's what happens. Lives change. Guys share. Lives change. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's. I can only speak from personal experience, but it really is, when you first approach that situation, it's intimidating. You're afraid. I mean, there's no other way to, you know what I mean? It's not like you're necessarily afraid for your safety, because it's not like you're going to expect there to be some kind of prison riot or something like that. There's all kinds of security. There's, it's a safe environment. But, you're afraid of what you're going to interact or run into. You know what I mean? Because you're talking, when you go to prison, jail, you're going to run into different kinds of offenders. You know what I mean? You're going to have people that are there from a domestic violence thing, people there from, not showing up to court. You know what I mean? Simple, small things all the way to big things. You know what I mean? Sad to say, I'm not going to lie, I have been in the Fresno County jails myself a couple times. Not for major stuff, just because of young being stupid, and it's not proud of it, you know what I mean, but I have seen it from the inside myself firsthand. You know what I mean? And I've seen how it works. I've seen the mindset. I understand how they have pods, and how that's all set up. So when you say that, it's like oof, I remember, But that was my 20s. You know what I mean? So I was a little bit more wild in my 20s. But I think that what you're doing is really good. So do you spend more time at the jails or in the prisons, or
jails?
In the jails.
So and for folks who don't know the difference, jail and prison are two different things. Jails are local, often in California, many states by county. So in Fresno County, we have the Fresno County Jail, downtown Fresno. Over 2,000 people, men and women, mostly men. Over 90% of people who are incarcerated are men. Boys are naughtier than girls, certainly more violent. But anyway, so that's the jail. And then if your situation gets to a point where you're convicted, then you go to prison, which is a state thing or a federal thing. But our ministry is jail. So what we do is, with Central Valley Connect is the name of our organization. And you could go to centralvalleyconnect.org, and that's our website, and you can see what we're doing. But so we've only been around for about 2 years. We realized a need, and we met a need, a handful of us who've done this kind of work. And so we meet with people one-on-one at the jail. And at the jail, it's through glass. You're on the other side, talking on the other side through the glass with someone. And it just goes by referrals, right? So if I go to visit Drew's in there for something. Hey, Drew, what's going on? My name's Jeff. I'm a volunteer chaplain. How are you? I got your name from so-and-so. Oh, well, we chat. At some point, I'm going to say, hey, is there anyone on your pod that, you think might like a visit? Oh, well, Joe Schmo. So, tell Joe Schmo I'll stop in the next week or two. He can refuse the visit, but I'm going to stop in. And that's how we see people. So right now, we visit between 60 and 90 people at any given time. And so we go visit people at the jail, and we're just there to share the love of Christ. We're considered volunteer chaplains. hey, how's it going? How are you? How are you today? Is it, and just get to know them. Tell me about yourself, this kind of thing. And that's, hey, where do you stand in terms of faith? Do you think about faith? Think about God? And we just open up a conversation. And most of the guys we visit have some interest in faith, or they are Christian because they wouldn't want to see a volunteer chaplain if not. Some aren't, but. And then, and that's what we do. And then we read the Bible together, we pray, and whatever. And then when they go off to prison, then we stay in contact when they go to prison. And we write them quarterly, so they're getting correspondence from us while they're in prison. And then when they get ready to be released, then we say, we give them a needs assessment and say, hey, what is it you need when you get out? How can we help you when you get out? And we try to get them connected with resources in the community to help them get back on their feet. Transitional housing, a job, a drug program, a church, whatever they need. So we don't provide those services. We just say, hey, yeah, we'll make a phone call for you. Let me call Teen Challenge or the Fresno Mission, or let me call these people we know who hire folks who are coming out of prison. We just make some connections for them. So that's kind of to get them, to show them the love of Christ with no judgment while they're in the jail. You know what I mean? You're reminded over and over and over when you're incarcerated that you're less than. It's a cold, dark place and a humiliating place, and
by design.
By design.
By design, like yeah.
So if we could just go in and just say, "Hey, how are you? I'm so glad to meet you. I'm so glad to see you," and genuinely, and that's it. And just that alone. I remember one of the first visits I made a little over 2 years ago, and the guy I met, he's in a lockdown unit. He's in his cell all day, and they get out every other day for 90 minutes to take a shower or work out or whatever. And I visited, and we got to chatting, and at the end, the tears are coming down his face. He said, Jeff, he said, thank you so much for coming. I said, you're welcome. He says, I feel alive. He says, my emotions are so dulled being in a cell all day, 24/7. And I come and talk to somebody with no agenda, and you're just here. I feel like a human being again. He says, I'm going to ride this high for a week. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. I feel like a human being again. Oh, I just showed up. Yeah. I don't have some degree in jail, man. I just showed up and said, hey, what's up, man? My name's Jeff. How are you? Let's talk.
That's awesome. So you actually do the one-on-one, through the glass. Yeah. You don't have like do they even allow like Bible studies in the jail environment?
Yeah, the way it works here in Fresno is that you can either, and I've done this in the past, where you go through, you get, fingerprinted and the whole background check, and you can go inside onto a different unit, and you could go once a week and teach a Bible study. Yeah, and they love that. There's always a need. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to visit people and have a personal relationship one-on-one, you can't do both. You're either on the inside doing Bible studies, which is lots of fun if that interests you. That's in a small group setting. But if you're one-on-one, like we do, you can't do both. So we do one-on-one, and I can tell you in the past, like year and a half, we've made over 400 visits down at the jail. We have, I would say probably about 10 active volunteer chaplains right now. We're always looking for folks who are interested in going down.
You can never have too many.
No, business is brisk, and or people to write. We have folks who write, and yeah. So it's super exciting work. It's never dull. I'm a teacher. I'm a full-time teacher. I'd love to be able to do this full-time, but I got a wife and 4 kids, and well, my oldest son has just graduated high school, and he's leaving Sunday for Marine Corps boot camp. So we're going to be down to 3 kids. But I've got a wife and many mouths to feed.
Hopefully you won't be down to 3 kids, just 3 in the house.
3 in the house, sir. That's correct.
let's hope that it doesn't, you don't lose one in the military. That statement is kind of like, oof,
Yeah. But I will say this. I think that ministry to the incarcerated, in the United States, we want to be safe as a society. That's legit. So we arrest a lot of people, and then we sentence them to long sentences because we want to be safe. I get that. But there's another side of it. So what about once they're incarcerated? We forget about them. And
they treat people like they're disposable, right?
Yeah, and they feel that. So I think I'd love to have the chance to just put it on people's radar, like, that's right, and they know from Matthew when you visited me, you're visiting. When you visit someone in prison, you're visiting me,
and so
26,
right?
Yeah, 25.
25, yeah.
And there's a great line in Hebrews verse that says, don't forget the prisoners. But I think the whole Bible talks about loving the marginalized, loving everyone, and so it doesn't matter what someone's done in terms of whether we love them. Those are our marching orders. You know what I mean? And so. To me, it makes perfect sense to go hang out with the incarcerated, and the more as a community of believers specifically, that we can show them the love of Christ, show them they're valuable, show them they're cared for. Well, wow! Then if they come out and then they feel more valuable, and then they pull it together, through the love of Christ and through the Holy Spirit, and we can just help them along. Well, then their family life becomes more solid. They get back together with their wife and the kids, and the extended family then is blessed, and they're more stable and more whole, and there's a ripple effect.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Huge.
plus, I mean, ripple effect is probably the best way to describe it, because if their life changes in jail, other prisoners see it.
Well, that's true too. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're around him, but it's like, what happened to homeboy over there? Well, you know what I mean? It's like he's different now. You know what I mean? Like, and then people will confront him, because people don't. You get too bored sitting around. You're going to have a conversation. And there are people who keep to themselves. You know what I mean? But for the most part, if something's changed about somebody, you're going to ask him, what happened? And then he's going to say, Jesus happened. You know what I mean? And that conversation in that kind of environment has huge impact. So that's major.
Yeah, lives change. I say to the guys, God talks to us everywhere. I said, it just seems like he talks to guys who are locked up louder. I said, and when guys are incarcerated, and ladies, but I only meet with guys, of course. We have female volunteers that meet with the ladies. But you have that time, and I say to the guys, you have an opportunity to be thinking. Guys seem to think about the bigger questions in life. Who am I? What is going on? Is there a God? Is he real? What's my relationship to him? How about Jesus? And they have a chance to think about these things and really chew on them.
And you have time. There's time, and then there's silence. You know what I mean? When you combine time and silence, you can hear God.
So true.
Even when you're not listening. You're like, oh, yeah, okay.
All right.
Yeah, when you combine silence and time, that God's present. You know what I mean? And you realize God's always present. And I think that's probably why, like, there's certain times of, like, of life that things become real impactful. Like, if you're ever out in the woods or in the desert or somewhere by yourself, you know what I mean? You start to realize there's things bigger than you. You start to realize, and it's really interesting, the further you get pulled away from society and the noise and things like television, and you know what I mean? Especially when you're pulled away from other people. If you spend time alone, you realize, you know what I mean? Because you can hear it, you can feel it, you're impacted by it. So, so prison is one of those places where, or jail even, is not as much. Prison is definitely one of those places, though. Jail. Those pods, they're filled with a lot of people. There's a lot of noise, a lot of impact. There's a lot of, there's TV, there's games, there's card games, there's stuff going on. But people who are not enjoying that environment, are the ones that are gonna, they're gonna feel that, But prison, definitely. Prison is one of those places where you're spending a lot of time alone.
Yeah, and I'm just amazed. You get the word of God into people's hands, and it does change things. And if you just show up down at the jail here in town and get talking to someone, you find out they need a Bible, you get them a Bible. If they want a study Bible, get them a study Bible. I had one guy say, I've been reading the Bible, he says, but I just don't understand it. I said, what don't you understand? He's like, well, all the words are just kind of. I said, do you read a lot? He's like, well, no, I've been in juvie since I was like 13. I never really learned how to read that well. So I looked up, and I knew it was a Bible that had like easier English. So I thought it's called the New International Reader's Version, and it's written at a 3rd grade level. I found this for this one guy, and I sent it to him, and he's like, "This is fantastic!" And so he can read the Bible now. Then another guy that I just visited Saturday, that I had sent the same thing to for the same reason, said, "I got that Bible. I can read the Bible now, Jeff. This is great." He says, "You know what? I call my wife at 10 o'clock every night, and we read the Bible together because I can read it now." Like, people are hungry. Just make it happen.
I didn't know there was that. I would have recommended, because I've done this to people who can't read very well, I would recommend children's Bibles. You know what I mean? There's actually like the storybook Bible, where, you know what I mean, which is, it takes the stories and it puts them into stories, and they're very biblically sound, and it's very solid. I'd be like, oh well, you know what? Here's your your little bit of soaked bread. You know what I mean?
But check that out. I was so glad to find it. I thought I had heard about it, and I looked it up, and sure enough, you can like go and buy. I don't know if you ever go on Bible Gateway, but you can put up 2 different versions of the Bible side by side. And you can look at them, but you can kind of compare. And it's just simpler language. So this way, it's a real Bible. You know what I mean? And Yeah, it's just
Yeah, well, the Bible is typically written for 7th grade, so you're talking about like it's like done down to 3rd grade. So
yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know they had that.
Yeah, His word doesn't come back void, doesn't come back empty, and I see it over and over. And I have guys who come down to visit, and they bring their Bible. They just want to talk about the Bible. I have one guy comes out with a list of questions. He's written his questions out for me, ready for It's fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's one of those things where it's like you hope you don't get stuck. You know what I mean? It's like, do I have the answer? Let me come back with you on that one.
I do, and I'll write down. I'll go home and figure it out for next time.
Yeah. That's real awesome. So before we wrap up, I want to hear at least one really impactful story. Something that, like, if you needed to tell the audience something that would hit them hard, like make sure that like it's like boom, Jesus is real. Jesus is in this hard. So tell me a story. Somebody's like maybe their life has changed, whatever you choose.
Yeah, and I've had a number of those. And recently, I've had a number of younger guys, 19, 20, 21, who are looking at life in prison and didn't know the Lord at all, and within the course of a month or two have come to faith. And I can't help but think that, if you grow up and I would say in a couple of these cases I'm thinking of, we would say, well, you murdered all these people or something, and we'd say, well, they're bad, they're a monster, lock them up, and all this kind of language, right? But when you talk to someone, you get to know their story, and you say, people are complicated, situations are complex, right? And I think of people and they share stories of sexual abuse from the time they were little, and physical abuse, and all this horrible stuff, and mental illness, and all this stuff, and then it all came up to this moment where this horrible thing happened, and you say, and they end up in jail, and you say, man, they got a complicated past, but they get the Word of God, and within a course of a couple of months, they're at peace. They're at peace. They can think clearly, and they feel like they have a purpose in life. And by us going to visit them and showing them the love of Christ, they're like, wow, I am valuable. I am loved by God. It doesn't matter what the environment is like in here. I know that I am somebody. Brian Stevenson, the man who wrote Just Mercy, which is a great book and then a movie, but he has a quote that says, "You are more than the worst thing you've done." And I share that a lot with people. And I say, it doesn't matter what's happened in the past. You're more than that. You shouldn't be just identified by that. You're more than that. And God loves you. God loves you. It's so simple.
Yeah, one of the things that I love to talk about with prisoners when they're like trying to like think of, like, well, I'm not part of this, it's not for me. And I'm like, okay, well, there's Paul.
Yeah, they love Paul, love Joseph.
Yeah. Paul spent a lot of time in prison. And Paul basically was a murderer of Christians. You know what I mean? So it's like if you think that you've done the worst, you know what I mean? Paul sat there and held the jackets when they stoned Stephen to death. Paul was basically a killer of Christians. I mean, the Bible doesn't really say that he physically killed Christians, but you know what I mean? I'm assuming that he threw a rock at some point. And
there's room at the table.
Yeah, and there's room at the table, right? So, anyway, Jeff, it is such a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah,
and
thank
have
you.
you
So
here
this is great.
on Radical Christianity, and we're going to definitely have to bring you back and get some updates.
Oh, I'd
and
love to.
Well, obviously, you need hands on deck.
Sure.
And the website is?
It's just centralvalleyconnect.org, one word.
centralvalleyconnect.org.
Yeah.
And do you have a donation page on there?
Yeah.
Okay, so you need funds and you need bodies.
We need prayer and money and bodies and love of Christ in the jail, man.
All right. So you guys got your marching orders.
There we go.
All right.
There we go.
Bless you, man.
Thank you so much.
All right. It's housekeeping time. Yes, in fact, housekeeping. Something I absolutely hate doing, but needs to be done. Yes, here at Radical Christianity, we operate on donations from viewers and generous people just like you. Yes, you. Yes, you with the large bank account. I'm talking to you. Yes. And we really, all kidding aside, we do operate on donation here. So if you could find it in your heart to give $5, $10, $15, $20 to Radical Christianity, you just go to our website, radforchrist.com, find the donate link, click that. It'll take you to the Mystery Christian Media donation page on PayPal. You just select Radical Christianity from the drop down, or you can select any of the Mystery Christian Media projects, and we would really be able to use that money to further God's work in the kingdom. It would be a blessing for us, it'd be a blessing for you, it'd be a blessing for the kingdom, and God probably bless you in return. So, if you can do that, we appreciate you. If you can't, then just please share the show on social media, tell a friend. If you know somebody who would be a great guest on the show, please contact us on radforchrist.com and let us know. All right? So anyway, that was the housekeeping, and now on with the show. Hey everybody, I want you to be excited for this next guest because I am. He is with Teen Challenge in the Fresno area. This guy is going to have some great things to say. So, everybody give a warm welcome for John Burns. John, pleased to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Please have a seat. All right. So, Teen Challenge, but for adults, right?
That's right.
Okay, that's interesting. We're going to need to hear about that. So the way we kind of do things here is a little bit specific. We kind of want to hear how you met Jesus. So like your kind of your testimony, so if you can share it with me and the audience, how you got together with Christ, and then we're going to lead that into how it worked into your ministry. So.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. I met the Lord through the ministry of Teen Challenge.
Okay.
So Teen Challenge is a residential ministry for teens and adults who struggle with addiction to drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
And I had addiction to drugs and alcohol for several years, and I was in and out of programs. I did get clean in a secular approach program and was in recovery in 12 steps. But all the while, I knew something was missing, and I didn't know what that was until I met some people who were involved with Teen Challenge, and that's where I learned about Jesus Christ. And then I could have a personal relationship. When I talked with those folks, I knew that they had what I was looking for. They had that peace, they had a sense of fulfillment, they showed love. And so I went through Teen Challenge, and that's really where I was discipled as a Christian. You know, for years on the streets, I ran into people who witnessed and asked me to say the sinner's prayer, and I always did. But it wasn't until I went through the ministry of Teen Challenge that I was discipled, that someone walked with me and prayed with me and showed me how to pray and showed me how to read the Bible and showed me how to live the Christian life. So it really was a remarkable experience for me through the ministry of Teen Challenges, where I fell in love with the Lord, where I received His love. And as a person who struggled with addiction for years, I received His hope. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And I actually couldn't believe it when I read it. I didn't think it was for me. I didn't think it was possible. I was convinced that I was hopeless. I got used to that. But I tested God on that, and I prayed that, and I spoke it to Him, and it truly came true for me. I found hope through His love and through my Savior, Jesus Christ.
That's awesome.
And I know this is not everyone's experience, but for mine, I experienced salvation, deliverance, and a calling, all kind of at the same time. I knew God had given me a new life, and that He was giving me this life to serve Him, and that I would serve Him. And I knew at the time I would do that at Teen Challenge. This was 30 years ago when I went through Teen Challenge.
Wow, okay. So how long have you been working with Teen Challenge? That whole time? Or?
No, I went to Bible college and prepared for ministry for 5 years. And then I joined the staff of Teen Challenge here in Southern California at the Kern County Centers in 1998.
Okay.
And I've been serving with Teen Challenge since then. And if it's okay to give you that background and the misnomer about how come adults there and it's called Teen Challenge.
Yeah.
Teen Challenge started in 1958 through a gentleman named David Wilkerson.
Okay.
He's a preacher from Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania. He decided to throw his TV out. And in the evening hours when he wouldn't watch TV, he would spend it in prayer. He was in his study praying, and there on the table he had the Life magazine open. And there was an article about a murder trial in New York City. A group of gang members mugged and murdered a handicapped kid in Central Park. And while he was in prayer, he locked eyes with the picture, actually the artist's rendering of the kids on trial. And when he looked at their eyes, he felt that Lord tell him, go and help those boys. So he found out when the court date was, traveled from Pennsylvania to New York City. The lobby of the court was lined with reporters. It was already covered in Life magazine. It was getting national coverage. And it was their trial. And during the court proceedings, he walked up to the bench to speak to the judge on the boy's behalf. And the bailiffs quickly gathered to him, and he raised his voice saying, no, Your Honor, I want to help those boys, and they escorted him out into the lobby. Of course, it was a bustle, and the reporters wondered what was going on. They said, what happened? And he told them, I came to help those boys, but they wouldn't let me. And one of the reporters kind of sarcastically asked, what's that in your hand? He said, it's my Bible. He goes, are you ashamed of it? He said, of course not. Well, lift it up. So he raised his Bible, they took his picture. The article said, Bible-waving preacher disrupts murder trial. And he was a joke, a mockery. And he never did get to talk to those boys. But he gained a little reputation from it, went back and prayed and felt that God told him there were others like them on the streets. And he could help them before they ended up on trial for murder or dead themselves. So he started walking around the streets of New York City and reaching out to gang members and drug addicts. Since the public made fun of him, the outcasts on the streets felt that he was one of them. And he was accepted by the people on the streets because they made fun of him like they made fun of them. And that started his outreach, the Ministry of Teen Challenge. Brother Wilkerson wrote a book about the story. It's called The Cross and the Switchblade.
I've read that. That was a great book.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's our legacy. And when he started the ministry, they got their first home on Clinton Avenue in Brooklyn. It was called Teen Challenge. And because that legacy and the heritage of the ministry of David Wilkerson is important to us, we've never changed the name. Although the scope of our ministry has evolved to adults, mostly around the country. There are adolescent centers, but most Teen Challenge centers are for adults, and there's different reasons for that. One of them has to do with the progression of sin and the strength of denial. And the other one has to do, frankly, with the codes in California. It's very difficult to get an adolescent center. It's a different ballpark to have an adult center. We had an adolescent center in Southern California.
California has difficult coding for
adolescent centers because it has to include education, medical, legal issues with the parents. So our centers are.
Isn't there a one in Oakland that's a adolescent center?
No.
No?
No, there's a Teen Challenge for adults in Oakland.
It's for adults?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is a ministry here in the Central Valley called Valley Teen Ranch. And when we came up, a lot of people, I think, get our two ministries mixed up. But it's two different ministries, and they do a good work. And theirs is for adolescents.
Okay.
Teen Challenge started in Southern California in 1963. When Brother Wilkerson had success with the center in Brooklyn, other cities called him out and said, hey, we need that too. So he personally came to Los Angeles in '63 and started the center. Back then, a young musician named Andre Crouch led the Teen Challenge choir, and they traveled. They call it Andre Crouch and the Addicts Choir. He was our first choir director, Teen Challenge of Southern California. He's singing with the angels in heaven now. And this year marks our 60th anniversary.
Oh,
From
60 years.
63 to 2023. Since the center started in Los Angeles, we started different sites. As I mentioned, Kern County, that started in '69. There's one in San Diego, one in Ventura, Orange County. Riverside is our headquarters. And yet, for decades, there's never been a Teen Challenge presence here in the Central Valley.
Which is weird.
very weird.
Because we are one of the worst areas.
There's a national reputation, for the bulldogs, decades ago for the methamphetamine, and currently for the opioid epidemic.
Yeah, well, we kind of were like the hot spot for meth for long. I mean, literally, Carruthers
Nationally,
was like,
for sure. And for such a time as this, we came up in 2014 with faith and vision that we needed a center up here. The community embraced us. It was a slow start. We leased an office in the Tower District, and we were just going to start there. I came alone 9 years ago, and a year and a half later, some property opened for us in Reedley, really through a miraculous outpouring of God's Spirit and generosity of several people and the community.
And Reedley's kind of beautiful sometimes. I mean, depending on what part of the area you're in, but I mean, if
We're in the orchards.
Well, then it's beautiful there.
Beautiful, peaceful, a peaceful place for the men to receive the peace of God. And close enough to Reedley that we're serving the greater Reedley area, but not far enough that the men are intimidated from the move, nor can their family not participate in regular visits. So we serve Fresno and the Central Valley. Our property literally splits the county line, the Fresno and Tulare counties. So we serve Fresno and Tulare counties. That's the area where we serve. And my hope coming here today and sharing with you about what God's doing is that others who need help can know about us.
Oh, definitely. That's one of the things that we do here is we try to highlight how God in action.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And obviously Teen Challenge is God in action.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so like highlighting what you're doing and is our mission as a show. So I mean that really is what we are here for. So, what kind of things does Teen Challenge need? I mean, do you need volunteers? Do you obviously need funding on top of what you already may have, but,
We do all of the above. We have volunteers that serve in a variety of capacity. We have a ladies guild that volunteers, and the ladies are like the spiritual moms of the center, and they do a lot for the men. We have 120 men that reside there now. The property has a capacity of 170 beds. We have 22 of us on staff. One lady works at our office in Fresno, which we still have, where we conduct our interviews. But with all these men around, we need some ladies there to keep us in line and keep the place in order. So the Ladies Guild, they do fundraising as well as they provide donations for the men for hygiene items. They also coordinate our blessing room where we get clothing donations. And if the men have need, which some of them come with the clothes off their back, we're able to provide clothing and hygiene items at no cost for them. And a lot of that is our Ladies Guild's work.
That's awesome.
They do Christmas presents for all of our students, and they decorate the campus, and they have that touch of love that really ministers to the men.
Especially if those men don't have a strong mother relationship or mother, in their life, I can see that make a huge difference. Yeah.
So we have 20 staff, and all of our staff, including myself, come from the background of addiction and are graduates of the Teen Challenge Ministry. So we can encourage the men and tell them that we understand what they're going through, and to tell them, like someone told me, that there's hope for you, that God can change your life. In fact, the first dormitory the men live in is called Hope Hall. Because we want the men to know that no matter how bad it is, no matter how far down the path of addiction they've gone, that hope is something God offers them, and He can turn their life around, that He has love and He has power for them to change. And those of us who struggle with addiction come to the realization we can't do it on our own. We promised ourselves, our family, that we'd stop. We threw the drugs away, and we went digging for it the next day in the garbage.
Yeah.
But there's a power from God that really He gives us that we don't have on our own.
Now, in fact, I have seen it. I've heard it a million times. Is the only time people go from hardcore addiction to completely free from drugs has been through a transition with God.
Yeah.
I've never heard it happen any other way.
So that's our focus there. We believe that a solution to a drug or alcohol problem is found in a personal relationship with Jesus.
Definitely.
That's why we consider ourselves not a rehab, but a discipleship ministry, a ministry of reconciliation, where we're reconciled to the relationship with the Lord, for ourselves, and then with others. And one of the beautiful things we get to see at Teen Challenge is when God restores those relationships. Often the family relationships are ruined by the time a person comes to us, but then in time God heals those. It is a one-year ministry. We don't have locks on the doors, but we tell people that their best success, our best success, is when they complete the year. And we want this to be a foundation for the men, that they're men of commitment, that they finish what they start. And really, after the year, they've just begun. And because of the generosity of the community, there's no charge for all of our services.
That's awesome. That's super important. I mean, those of you watching, how do they find your local chapter? How do they donate?
Our office in Fresno is on North Wishon, and the telephone number there is 549-6657. We do interviews for people who want help. We do ask for identification and also ask for them to go to a doctor and get some tests done. That normally takes about a week. And then we do intakes every Monday. So for the person who needs help, they just come do an interview and then we can get them a bed. We do have beds. As I said, we have about 50 empty beds right now. We're still growing after 8 years. Of course, the coronavirus set us back. You know, it literally cut our population in half. But in the last year, we've been restoring since then.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a need. So, what about like volunteers and donations? Do they you have a website that, or they just call the number, or?
We do have a website. It's teenchallenge.org.
Okay.
And that's our Southern California website. Each of the 9 centers in Southern California has our own page. And there's a Donate Now button, and then there's all the centers' names. So you can designate it to the Central Valley.
Okay.
And whatever's given to Central Valley Teen Challenge serves the folks at Central Valley.
Okay. So if you're watching that, go to the website and look up the Central Valley and cough up some funds, because it is a very good cause. So tell me a success story, something that really amazing that you've seen happen.
I think of one of our current staff members. His name is Jordan. And he came to us 3 years ago. And his relationship with his family was a bridge that was burnt because of his meth addiction. And it got so bad that he ended up in a psychiatric ward. He was walking on the highway trying to get hit by a car because he thought there were people chasing him, people that weren't there. And his family was done just because he had hurt them so much. And this was a person who never knew God, was never a Christian before, and came just because he was at the end of his rope. But when he first came in, we go to chapel services, we go to prayer every morning. And so he reluctantly gave God a chance, and God changed his life. He poured his love out on him. Jordan accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. The Lord restored his family. His wife started coming back. He has 2 young kids. So he became the dad again and the husband that God intended him to be.
That's amazing right there.
He finished. He went back to be with his family. He pursued ministry training, and he's almost done his bachelor's degree. He's working on staff with us. He's a gifted preacher, and he's asked to speak at local churches around the Fresno area. And he does a lot for the ministry and encourages the men. And it's just so good to see the life that God gives, how God could take a life that's turned upside down and restore that life.
Nothing short of a miracle.
It is a miracle.
Yeah, it's definitely a miracle. So do you guys have like events, things that you're doing? I believe I heard something about soaps.
Yeah, we have soaps. I brought you a bar.
Oh, excellent.
One of our team members had the vision to teach the men how to make natural soap. So we use natural and local ingredients. And
Local ingredients?
yeah,
No.
we use olive oil from Bari,
Okay.
and they have their own press. It's just a few miles from our campus. So he didn't even know how himself. He had to like watch YouTube and go to some people and ask, and it took about a year to develop it, but now we have 4 different scents that we sell, and we offer it available for sale, and it generates a little income for the ministry. The men are learning how to do something constructive and be creative.
So how do you sell it? Is it through the website or?
We do have some on sale through our website, and we've also been going to the local farmers markets.
Okay.
We set up a table at our events when we do have them, and if churches or organizations have us, and we ask them if we could set up a table and make it available as well. So it's real grassroots right now, and getting the word out. But people are saying that they really like it, and they're coming back.
Is there like a brand name that you're?
It's called Amare, and that's the Latin word for love. And
Okay.
it was the vision of the team member that really had the vision to create it.
That's awesome.
We believe in love at Teen Challenge. We know that God's a God of love, and love makes a difference in people's life, and it brings healing to the person who has addiction and problems.
Well, usually the addiction and problems come from a lack of love. So love is tends to be, not every time, but more often than not tends to be the cure. Which
God heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, and that's one of the processes that occurs at Teen Challenge. And
yeah.
that's why it's important for us that we're a year, we're set apart. The men are out of the chaos of life and really just focused on that relationship with the Lord. You mentioned events. I'm excited that as we're celebrating our 60th anniversary, we're having an anniversary banquet. And it's going to be down at Riverside where our headquarters is. It's July 23rd.
That's awesome.
And we're going to honor some of the partners in ministry that have been important in the development of the ministry, people God's used through the years. In fact, I'm not 100% sure if they'll make it, but Andre Crouch's family was invited to receive a posthumous award for him and his part in getting Teen Challenge started in LA. The first director of LA is still ministering part-time. He's in his 80s. And some of the leaders from here in Fresno County that were instrumental in getting this ministry started are going to be honored as well. So we're the young brother of the team, but we're like that young brother that grew bigger than all the other brothers and sisters. We're the big young brother. We're actually the largest center in the state with 170 beds.
That's awesome, though.
The Lord really knew that the need was big here, and He showed us His big plans, immeasurably more than we could have ever asked or imagined.
The need is huge here. I mean, like, unprecedentedly huge. I have lived in different places in this country, and I was blessed when I was younger to be in a rock and roll band that toured, so I got to see a lot of the country.
Oh, I'm sure.
The Central Valley is probably the most depressed place I've ever been in the United States. It's like this massively depressed community, and because of that, it tends to push people to try to find something to cure their pain.
Yeah.
And obviously Jesus is the cure.
He is.
But for people who can't find Jesus on their own, tend to turn to drugs, tend to turn to gang violence because they feel like that's a family that they don't have. You know what I mean? There's these sad alternatives to Jesus that people find, and there's a lot of them here. And it's also kind of interesting that we also have in the Central Valley a large community of churches.
Yeah.
A larger concentration of churches here than almost anywhere else I've been.
God's doing good things here for sure.
Yeah.
And we want to be part of that at Teen Challenge. We've been blessed to partner with some of the other ministries. And I believe God's using that partnership and unity, people like yourselves, that we can do this together.
Yes.
to share
yeah.
his light as
Well,
well.
we definitely want to be informed and keep in touch on that kind of stuff.
Thanks.
We will definitely try and bring you back. And you know what? Remind me when you guys are leaving messages that we need to bring him back, because I'm sure you have some people who have some great testimonies
Sure.
that would be very impactful, that my audience would be able to
We'd
get
be
something
happy to
from.
share some.
Yes, that would be fantastic.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming on
Thank you,
Radical
Drew.
Christianity.
All right.
You're definitely rad for Christ. You're
All
definitely
right.
fired up for Jesus, and I love to see that.
All right. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us again for another episode of Radical Christianity. We're so glad you were here with us. I hope you enjoyed the show. It was pretty impactful for me. I think we had some great guests. And there is somebody who's watching right now who is feeling Jesus knock on their heart. The door of their heart is getting a little bit of a, right? Because they've been listening and maybe wondering about this Jesus thing and all that kind of stuff. But I want you to understand, Jesus is nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to be worried about. If you feel that, let me just say it this way. Not choosing Jesus is not just waiting, okay? It's actively, resisting. It's an active no, you either accept him or you don't. So if you are sitting there, you're wondering, and you're like, well, maybe someday, there's no better time than right now. And it's really easy. All you got to do is, talk to him. You don't have to be formal. You don't have to have any kind of crazy prayer. You don't have to say it out loud. You just tell Jesus, it's like, hey, Jesus, I need you. I want to be the person you've made me to be. I want to be more like you. I want you to take over my life. These things are just ways to engage Christ into telling him that we want him to be in our life. And when you do that, he's going to come in. He's going to take over. He's going to help. You're still in control of your own life. You're still going to have your own freedoms and own choices, but he's going to be there for you. When you pray for him and you talk to him and you ask him, you will see there's a difference when Jesus is in your life. And you don't need to be super formal. Just tell him. You know what I mean? And then here's the thing, right? So if you believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord and you speak with your mouth that he's, he's the King of Kings, he's the Son of God, you're going to be saved, right? And if you've done that today, while we're watching the show right now, I want to welcome you to the family of God. But I also want you to contact me on our website, rad4christ.com. Contact me and tell me that you got saved. There's a little form you can fill out. It says got saved. Fill out the form. Contact me. Tell me that you got saved during the show, because I want to send you a Bible, and I want to reach out to you and support you and pray for you. Okay? So please do that if you sat there and you prayed with us and you received Jesus during the show. Okay? And I want to thank you again for coming. Also, if on the website, you can go there, and if you have a question, you can ask a question. If you have a prayer request, we're happy to be there for you. If you just want to communicate something to us, we'd love to hear from you, okay? And this is really important. I want everybody to remember this one thing. That's Jesus Christ loves you. And so do I. Thank you for watching Radical Christianity. We'll see you next week.
And I'm not giving up, giving up, no, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me. I will hold.
It's a mystery.